spreading the word about the damage that we do that we don't even realize. But then she also brings hope. And Reverend Cylvia, we are so happy to have you back. So welcome back to Unity Kitchener.
Thank you so much.
Record.
I do have to say, I love that song you played, the One Beating Heart. I wrote it down.
Okay, just give me one sec. It is gorgeous, isn't it?
Yes, totally. You're going to play that other song before I speak?
I can do it before or after, whichever you suits you.
I'm good to go if you want me to go. Am I on?
I believe so.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me, everybody. It's great to be with you all again. You guys do a terrific job with the online portion of this. I want to read you a quote from Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi. He said, "It's the action, not the fruit of the action, that's important. You have to do the right thing. It may not be in your power, may not be in your time that there will be any fruit, but that doesn't mean you stop doing the right thing. You may never know what results come from your action, but if you do nothing, there will be no result." There is a lot of ugliness and a lot of darkness in our world just now. And I am both a Unity minister and kind of a political and news junkie. And I don't think those two things are incompatible. If you're someone who's paying a lot of attention to the multi-crises going on in our world, it can be overwhelming and it can be painful. But even so, I am here to urge you that if you are someone who's not paying attention, who just can't look, I'm here to urge you to think about changing that stance. And if you are someone who is engaged and already doing what you can in your niche in trying to make the world a better place, I want to say thank you. I have certainly found for me personally, though it's painful to open up to the darkness, that's less painful than trying to go on as if it's not happening and not taking agency. So that's what I am going to talk about. I've been in New Thought now for a couple of decades, and I've bumped in a lot, and I'm pretty sure folks on this call will have also bumped into a tension between our unity principles and the principle of focusing on the positive and looking toward the light, and facing and taking action on really difficult and dark issues before us. I think that right now, I became a Unity minister for two main reasons. The first one is I believed that spiritual communities, spiritual leaders, spiritual voices are going to be increasingly important going into the times of upheaval and real system change that we are all now navigating, whether we're openly acknowledging that or not. That was the first reason. And secondly, I believe New Thought, I believe our movement has an incredibly powerful role to play right now in these times. So part of my niche with my ministry is to be kind of a burr under the saddle pad of fellows in our movement to encourage, even if you're already taking action, let's do more. And I would really like to see our movement become more of a leading voice for a world that works better for all beings. Now, as a lifelong activist, I've learned the hard way that the consciousness we take into activism is incredibly important. And I speak a lot about sacred activism. And sacred activism is the fusion of deep spiritual knowledge and principle with wise, radical action for positive change in our outer world. So, for instance, when I'm going into a protest, there have been a lot of those in the United States and the world lately. When I'm going into that, I make sure that I'm not going in with an us versus them attitude. It's very easy for me right now, for a lot of us right now, especially in the US, to have an us versus them approach or tone. And I feel it, even if I'm feeling it, which if I'm honest, I am. I make sure that I cleanse that a little bit before I go into an activist role. And I also want to say right on the front end, there's all kinds of activism. You can do the direct protests and the marches and things. That's kind of an area of my specialty. You can also use your voice, writing, speeches and talks like this, but even one-on-one conversations can be a form of activism that we all can do. I think it's tempting sometimes to just shut down when we're dealing with someone who is, quote, on the other side of an issue. But I don't think that's always very useful. Sometimes it is. And I'll come back to that. Prayer and meditation is a form of activism. Boycotting companies that are doing harmful things is a form of activism. And raising food, funds, resources for people and animals in need is a form of activism. Sacred activism, it finds a balance between meditation and marching. It involves being able to take our principled meditative mindset off the mat and into the messes. Now, I think in my experience with New Thought, there's a little extra tension between our principles and politics. And I'm not going to talk a lot about that, but I want to make a distinction that I have found helpful in even talking with people within our movement. Partisan and politics are not synonymous. It's often used that way or viewed that way, but partisan is about parties. It is about us versus them a bit. Politics is about policy and governance and how we go about organizing and governing ourselves. So I just try to make that distinction because I would like to see a great degree of political engagement from people like on this call that have the New Thought disciplines that enable us to move through the world a little more peacefully. Voting, working on campaigns, giving money to candidates, running for office, those are all forms of sacred activism if approached in a grounded way. I would also say taking the time to develop informed opinions on issues that are affecting lives is a form of activism. So I will say, I know it's no surprise to you. I've got a lot of Canadian friends and they know what's going on, but I can tell you here in the United States, we're having a bit of a wake-up moment right now. We sort of took for granted for a while voting and voting rights and things like that. And we're realizing that's not something to be taken for granted. That is something to remain consistently active on protecting and ensuring. This is a scary time, but it's also a really hopeful one. I believe that a spirituality that's focused only on one's personal growth, one that is devoid of authentic political and social consciousness, that's going to be useful to that person no matter what. But I think it doesn't meet the moment that we're in right now. We are in a moment of either evolution or devolution. So I believe we're in a moment where we're being called to be more active. And on the other hand, and I've seen this firsthand, I have been guilty of this, and activism that is not grounded in spiritual wisdom and principle can often just perpetuate the problem that it's trying to solve. It can take that battlefield mentality into issues that actually need peace and healing. I believe the goal is to ground our spiritual wisdom, vision, and principle and marry it to practical, pragmatic, and often public action to, yes, say no. That sometimes is controversial in New Thought as well. There is a need for resistance to certain things. Jesus was an example. He gave us an example of that. So to say no to what is not okay and to be for what is a better way. I believe that this is a huge moment for humanity to be doing that. And there are, like I mentioned, way showers, lots of examples. Jesus was one, right? He turned over moneylenders' table. No, what you are doing here is not okay. He didn't personally attack the people behind the tables, but he did say the action is not okay. He was radical. He was a radical activist. Judaism has the concept of tikkun olam, that is repairing the world. This concept has evolved into a broad kind of ethical framework for pursuing justice in our world. And like the wisdom that Gandhi put forward in that quote that I shared at the beginning, tikkun olam kind of assumes an incompleteness. You're not probably going to finish the work. I have come to accept that I am probably not going to change the entire freaking capitalist exploitive economy in my lifetime. That has been the goal of my lifetime. But it doesn't mean I don't keep the work going. It doesn't mean I don't keep educating and pushing and helping develop policy toward that end. In Mahayana Buddhism, I always trip on that, the bodhisattva plays an important role. And the bodhisattva is the one who has attained wisdom necessary for individual liberation, but stays around, stays here to help all the rest of us become more enlightened and to grow and to improve. Islam holds that human beings are khalifa, stewards of the earth. It means we're entrusted with the earth and with those coming after us. And their version of an afterlife is not so much about reward or punishment at the end, but it's about kind of taking stock of how good a stewards we were. What did we do with what was before us, with what was pressing in the time that we were here? And I love that you guys shared your land acknowledgement. Unity or new thought is actually new thought, ancient wisdom, right? We pull a lot on indigenous wisdom in our ever evolving body of spiritual understanding. There's a beautiful thread through a lot of indigenous pathways of intergenerational responsibility. The Iroquois have a 7 generations principle. Every action that we take today, we should be thinking, what's the impact of that going to be 7 generations into the future? The Lakota concept, I love this, of all my relations, that goes beyond humanity. That goes out to all species and all beings. I am, as Cheryl noted, a lifelong environmentalist, and I actually have less of an anthropocentric view than an ecocentric view. So this concept of all my relations, I love. And I think, one of the goals of my work is to help us move beyond, help humans evolve beyond such a human arrogance approach to life. I think we would have a far fewer ecological crises if we came back around to an all my relations approach to our planet. And then the founders of our very own New Thought movement, along with the indigenous wisdom, they demonstrated sacred activism. Ralph Waldo Emerson, the transcendentalist, they were foundational to the New Thought movement. And Emerson is often portrayed as kind of a intellectual, pastoral pacifist, but he was an activist. He spoke out very, very strongly against slavery and in support of women thought leaders. Again and again, Emerson's writings return to a similar concern that the soul does not lose its vitality through dramatic corruption. It loses vitality through accommodation, through accommodating the cultural norms that are doing harm. He viewed conformity not merely as a social problem, it was a spiritual one. Emma Curtis Hopkins, she's off. I've taught for our Unity Ministerial Schools a few times, and I've taught this New Thought history, which I have loved. So I've learned a few things. She's very overlooked most of the time. She was put forward as the teacher of teachers in New Thought. Super influential. And she didn't simply ignore injustices. She created schools, she challenged assumptions, and she helped people recognize that the internal conditions contributing to the suffering while also taking action in the outer world. And in fact, I'll share a book with you in the Zoom after this call. I just learned a little bit more of this history, that in the very early days of New Thought, when it was emerging in North America, was heavily involved in the women's suffragist movement, almost inextricably involved. It was founded on a form of activism. And it really wasn't until the 1930s, when capitalism just took over in America, that New Thought shifted a bit more toward the rugged individual, toward personal growth and personal prosperity. That's a very new, relatively new wrinkle in the whole New Thought story. Now, New Thought changed my life. Raise your hand if New Thought changed your life for the better. I think most of us on a call like this would say, that is the case. Affirmative prayer, denials and affirmations. Oh my God, for me, learning to take dominion over my own thinking. Those are powerful, irreplaceable principles. And we build muscles with those as we continuously use them. And they alone, I don't believe, are enough to get humanity through the predicament that we are currently floundering in. We're in a time of polycrisis, if you haven't heard that term yet. Multiple crises kind of at the same time, often with feedback loops between them. Ecological systems are struggling. Social dysfunctions are heightened now. The global economy based on extraction and consumption is completely unsustainable. What we've been seeing recently in the Middle East absolutely highlights that very clearly. I've written about that in my Substack. The multiple wars. Oh, let's hold a prayer that we get to the end of some of those, perhaps even today. Humanity's at an inflection point. Or, as I said, we're either at a point of evolution or devolution. And here is something that I find very, very hopeful. In nature, in biology, evolution doesn't happen without pressure. A species or a population of species goes along, and as it's doing its thing, the conditions within which it lives are changing. The environment's changing. And it reaches a point where suddenly the way it was doing things, what it was eating, where it was taking shelter, those things are no longer working. And it is at that pressure point when the sometimes very rapid adaptation happens, a mutation, a positive mutation that allows that species to continue to survive. It takes that kind of pressure. Humanity is hitting such a pressure point right now, such a wall. We have to adapt both our way of doing things and our worldview. And who better, guys, who better to help humanity move through this than people like you all, who already have a relatively well-developed ability to control your mind, to maintain peaceful states of mind while facing very difficult things. We need to create a new societal ecosystem and a healthier form of civilization on national and global scales. And in an ecosystem, individual species fill niches. They don't do everything. They fill niches. This bird eats the seeds from that particular tree, poops out those seeds, and propagates that tree. This bird over here doesn't eat that seed, but it eats another seed, and so it propagates that, etc. That's why what I encourage folks to do is to find the thing that you're most passionate about and fill that niche. Find a way to take action in that niche and be part of a new ecosystem of consciousness, working toward a world that works better for all beings. You've heard it said, guys, but we are the ones we've been waiting for. No one's going to swoop in this messed up system and fix it for us. We are the ones. If you're afraid that engaging, that really looking closely at some of these dark things will bring depression and sadness, you're right. You're right. Looking at much of what's going on in the world is hard. Taking action is hard. But I want to say something. If you're able to look at the abuses, the cruelty, the damage being done, and not be a little bit disturbed, something's wrong with you. You're not broken if you get disturbed by looking at what's dark. You're human, and you're a human with enough compassion and empathy and a desire for better in our world. So it's okay to get a little depressed. Now, if you're someone who's struggling mightily with that, or you're in an acute phase, I would encourage you to not do this right now. Wait until you're sound and grounded. But I think recognizing that sometimes we're gonna have some uncomfortable emotions when we are leaning into correcting the darkness in our world. For me, I have those moments, but I know that I won't stay there. And so I can allow that to happen. That's my heart hurting, right? The grief reflects the amount of love. So that's my encouragement. And I think knowing that I can sit in this discomfort and I will come out of it, that is what helps me start to come back from the ledge of despair. So I wanted to share that with you. I love this. I recently learned of this quote from philosopher Krishnamurti, and he noted, "It is no sign of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society." So if we're feeling a little discord, it's because we're sane, right? I think it's an important point to remember. And in our New Thought movement, it's often we're trained to like, ooh, I'm feeling something negative. Let's fix that up. Yeah, we have the tools to do it, but there's really nothing wrong with feeling a little discord in a very discordant time. As so many of our way showers have demonstrated, spirituality, I don't believe, is supposed to be a shield or a screen from the difficult stuff before us. Instead, practical spirituality gives us the tools for activating inner peace, even as we are being realistic about what we're looking at. I didn't have time in this talk, but in our Zoom conversation, I'm happy to share some of the practices that I have found so useful over my life in being able to constantly work on hard, difficult issues, but stay peaceful, stay hopeful, stay grounded. We have a lot of tools in our toolbox for that. Again, the goal is not to avoid discomfort. The goal is to be able to develop the inner resources that allow us to transcend discomfort. It's one of the reasons why my Substack is called Transcend. New Thought teaches, right? I'm sure you've heard this. New Thought teaches that when we're facing a challenge, the trick is to see things rightly. But we can't see rightly with our eyes closed, figuratively or literally. This is a time to take a clear-eyed look at insanity, apply the wisdom that we know, and really, really move towards something better. And that brings me to the second big piece of, I think, what's needed right now to meet the moment. The first is the courage to face it. And the next is the imagination to envision a new and better way. For 3 full years, I know many of you will know this story, psychiatrist Viktor Frankl was held in unbelievably, probably indescribably horrific conditions in a concentration camp. And when he got out and did his landmark work, he transmuted that darkness by sharing the wisdom he'd gained. He shared that one of the things that kept him alive was the ability to envision life beyond the camps, the ability to actually envision reuniting with his wife. Imagination for him was a personal survival strategy. I believe now it just might be a species level survival necessity. Emerson noted, what we can conceive and believe we can achieve. When I'm talking about shifting an entire economic system, a lot of people can't even imagine what a different system would look like, but a lot of us can, right? I'm working on a piece right now that describes what a healthier economic system could look like, because a lot of people have a hard time visioning. But we have a superpower Unity has a body of teaching called 12 Spiritual Powers. Imagination is one of those. It's not just Pollyannish frivolity. It's a muscle. It's a mental muscle that we actually can develop. I can imagine an economy based on restoration rather than extraction. I can envision a world filled with nations that solve disputes with diplomacy and wisdom rather than war. I can see the United States Department of War being replaced by a Department of Peace. I can feel how good it will feel when plastics are being scrubbed out of the oceans and all manners of wild and weird and magnificent species are rebounding and repopulating. I can envision those things. Can you envision those things? Can you envision a better, healthier world? In addition to calling out the BS that we see, it is a sacred act to hold space in our consciousness for the possibility of such transformation. Again, unity, new thought, we have something powerful to offer along those lines. We know the generative power of thought, and we have developed the concept of imagination as an actual act, as a superpower. We have and are strengthening our capacity to see the possibilities in the present moment. The Fillmores used to talk about the reality in back of the difficult circumstances that we're seeing before us. And I'll give you an example of this. As I mentioned, as you all know, my country is a mess right now. It's been dark here. We have dark forces at the helm, and our society is pretty fractured. And like so many, I have and I do run the gamut of emotions around that. I am a world-class sleeper. I'm so grateful for that. But after this last election, when the person wound up in the White House again, I went 9 nights that I couldn't sleep all the way through the night. And I was not alone. It is a heavy, heavy thing that has happened here, is happening here. But I'll tell you, I have to share this with you too. One of my favorite, and part of that disturbed sleep that I had was dread. It was dread of what's coming, right? I knew it was going to be bad. One of my very favorite protest signs read, "I knew it would be bad, but WTF." Right? I mean, that's kind of the feeling. And I have to say, another one, this is probably beneath a unity talk, but another of the most hilarious signs was being held by this kind of big, burly, manly man. And it said, "I hope Big, Beautiful Bill is the name of Trump's cellmate." Okay. I know that's probably beneath your all the dignity here, but I just think you got to put a little humor. You got to put a little humor into activism, I believe. But seriously, as difficult as things are right now in the US, and I'm using this example intentionally, the thing that I find hopeful is our systems were a mess before this last election. Our economic system, our electoral politics, our campaign finance issues, we had problems. We were in need of system change on many fronts before the fracture that's happening now. I really believe that there is a huge opportunity. I'm sensing it. There's a level of activism in society now that has not been there before. There's a level of awareness, even amongst progressives, that it's not about just getting back to where we were, because where we were was not okay. That's a reason. There's a reason we're where we're at. It's because of where we were. So for me, there's an openness to question that there has not been before. And that is incredibly hopeful. We have the possibility of harnessing the darkness in these times, whether it's just at a national scale or whether it's on the many global issues that we must address globally, we have a chance to harness the darkness for an evolutionary upgrade in consciousness and in our way of relating to one another and the rest of nature. That is before us in the field of possibilities. Martin Luther King Jr., he was able to look at Jim Crow America, at all the darkness and the ugliness and the resistance to change in a positive way. And he could see not just what was, but what also was trying to be born. He asked people to make huge sacrifices, their jobs, their positions, sometimes their lives, for a future that they couldn't touch yet. They couldn't see it. He was successful, not just because he gave good speeches, which obviously he did, but he was able to teach people, to train people to have a hope that was strong enough to survive looking at reality. This is the opportunity before New Thought to help people develop the ability to have hope, to keep positive mindset that is strong enough to survive looking at and getting engaged with the very pressing issues before us right now. In this season of upheaval, I'll close this talk with this prayer. May we grieve without letting it harden our hearts. May we name what is broken without losing our capacity to dream. May we live beyond the destruction and lean into our call to build a world that works better for all beings. May we shout hallelujah anyway. And may we shine our light in our unique niche, building toward a brighter future. And so it is. Much love, guys. Cheryl, do I take us straight into meditation now? You're muted.
Yes, you can. That would be great. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I want to invite everyone once again to relax into this moment, to bring our awareness into the holy instant of right now, knowing that right now we are safe, we are loved. And I encourage you to open space in your mind and heart to think about the aspect of darkness in our world that is most meaningful to you, that you care about the most. And to just feel a bit of the ache. I long to be part of a human species that is a restorative force on this planet. I feel that. And once you've touched in with that, and congratulate yourself for feeling, for the capacity. The grief reflects the depth of love. I now invite us in our own way, moment or two of silence, to imagine that darkness being healed, that issue no longer being a problem in our world.